welcome you all to Believer Science Academy. In today's topic of the day discussion, we will be looking at an update with respect to the present retail inflation which is going on, and it says that this year's October 2025 it has seen a historic low of 0.25 percentage fall, especially in the retail inflation. So now this is something that time and again comes in the newspaper with respect to retail inflation. Of course, for the examination, especially for your preliminary examination in the economy section, of course inflation is one of the important chapters from which every year there are at least 2 to 3 questions which can be framed, and that is obviously a very important chapter. But this retail inflation, or keeping the exact figures, is not at all required for the examination, but since we are covering the daily updates, it is better that we know what are the effects of the reduction of the retail inflation over a period of time. So the effects of the retail inflation, whether when it increases or it decreases, that becomes absolutely important to know, because the questions, be it in the preliminary examination or probably in the mains, even when you have to talk about the growth and development, the economic history, or even the economic stance of the government or the RBI, right? So we need retail inflation as one of the important tools to talk about the inflation, especially as it is also measured by CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Of course, we will see in brief what retail inflation is, what is the effect of the retail inflation because it has reduced, right? So this is what is the context of this particular video, the content of this particular video. And if we have to see the context, it is said that it is the lowest since January 2012. According to the government, this sharp fall is mainly due to 3 reasons which it states. First one obviously is the GST, which the government recently modified, and the impact of the GST, the reduction in various commodities, mostly as a part of your CPI basket, has drastically contributed for the reduction of the inflation, is what is the first reason. And second obviously is the base effect, because a favorable base effect, because the very same month, October, but in 2024 the inflation was very high, and the very same month but in 2025, but as compared to 2024, now the rate is absolutely less, right? So that is also one of the reason why the inflation rate, especially the retail inflation, has gone down with respect to the government, the base effect. And then the food prices, because of the decline in the prices of food items, especially in vegetables, fruits, oils and cereals, has also immensely contributed for this particular stage. So now what is retail inflation? So retail inflation represents the rate of increase in prices of goods and services consumed by the households, which is measured by the Consumer Price Index, and it includes all those items which are being used by the consumers on a daily basis. So it reflects how expensive daily life is, and it also pretty much covers various categories, right? Like for example, it has all the items under the food category, the housing, clothing, transport, and some of the miscellaneous services that directly affect the consumer. And also it is, to some extent considered or called even as consumer inflation for the same reason as well, right? So that is in brief what your retail inflation is. And as we discussed in the very first slide, the reasons for the fall: first is the base effect, because the last year in October 2024 the food inflation was around 9.7%, creating a very high base. So now from this 9.7% in 2024 of October, and this very particular month in the very same year 2025, this inflation has drastically reduced. So hence we can see that it is also the base effect, obviously a virtual effect, which is making us feel that the inflation has reduced, because the last year the same time the inflation was considerably high. Second is the GST rate cuts, because the reduction in the GSTs on some of the essential items like footwear, transport, communication services, including all those essential equipments, even like for example washing machine, refrigerators, all those things which are basically used as a consumables by the consumers over the period of time has reduced because of the government's recent reduction as a Diwali gift to the people, also has an immense effect on the retail inflation as well. So that is also one of the reason. Next is the obvious drop in prices, because the food and beverages category saw a contraction of 3.7%, which is a very huge contraction, and this has led for cheaper vegetables, fruits and eggs as well. So these three reasons are very important, right? Very, very important to keep in mind. One is the base effect, next is the GST rate cuts, and also the drop in food prices. So now if we have to see what are the implications of this low inflation, there are two sets of implications. Obviously the positive effect and also the negative or the cautionary points. First is with respect to the positive, it increases the purchasing power, right? Consumers can now buy more with the same income, because when prices rise very slowly, people can buy more goods and services with the same amount of money. For example, if your salary stays same but prices of food and fuel don't rise, your real income increases, right? You feel richer. And second is the policy flexibility. RBI now can consider cutting interest rates, encouraging borrowing and investment, right? Because with inflation under control, the Reserve Bank of India can reduce the interest rates, and lower the interest rates makes the borrowing cheaper, which eventually encourages people and businesses to take loans, spend and even invest, which ultimately boosts the economy as a whole, right? Third one is the economic stability, because the low inflation helps in containing fiscal pressures and keeping growth steady, because moderate inflation is always a very good tool and the most required tool for any growing economy. So moderate inflation also helps governments manage its budget better, and also keeps the overall economy predictable and mostly steady. And this also reduces the pressure of rising costs and allows stable long-term growth, right? So this is also very important. So a very ideal inflation or even a moderate inflation is also the recipe for a long-term growth in an economy. However, there are also few negative points as well. So first is the too low inflation may signal weak demand in the economy, obviously, because very low inflation, or I can even say the net zero inflation, can mean that people aren't buying enough. They are absolutely not buying sufficiently. So this shows what? A reduced demand or a weak demand in the economy, which can slow the growth, right? Obviously the growth will also take a hit, which will slow the growth, and also this will even reduce the employment rate, right? Reduce the employment rate, or you can also say that the job creation in the economy also drastically reduces, and also produces profits may shrink if prices remain stagnant or fall, which means if prices remain the same or if they fall, businesses earn less for their goods and services, because now the goods and services which are produced by the businessmen will pretty much the same thing, the constant, right? So now if the prices remain the same or they fall, right, businesses earn less for their goods and services, and lower profits earned by these business persons, right, can reduce the production, and also this can even increase layoffs as well, and also probably less investment in the future, right? So once again, it will drastically affect the economy. Then could also delay investment decisions if firms expect lower future returns, because when companies expect prices or let's say profits to fall in the future, they may delay new projects or expansion plans. This can eventually slow economic momentum, right? And also this once again reduces the jobs. So ultimately it is very important to keep, make sure that low inflation, or it is important to know that low inflation is good for consumers and gives RBI more control over the economy. But too low of an inflation can be very risky. It may show that the economy is losing demand and business confidence, leading to slower growth in the long run, right? So that is one of the important key takeaway of this video. So talking about the category wise highlights, so if we have to see food and beverages, as we discussed, it has seen a contraction of 3.7%, which has become the major contributor of the fall. Housing has seen a 3% increase, a slight rise. Clothing and footwear has seen 1.7%, which was earlier 2.7%. So now it has seen a 1% reduction. Miscellaneous things, obviously it has 5.7%, which is slightly an increase from the earlier 4.3%. And pan, tobacco and intoxicants has seen probably more 0.04% more as compared to the last. So anyway, that's all for this particular video. Even before we end the video, let's solve one prelims question. Which of the following statements about retail inflation in India is correct? It is measured using the wholesale price index. It reflects the rate of change in prices faced by consumers. It is used by the Reserve Bank of India for setting monetary policy. So which of the statements are correct? So that is your question for the day. Please utilize the comment section to leave your answers below. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.